Hi, everybody. My name is Cindy Kirkendall, and I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon and Alateen family groups. Oh, y'all can do better than that. Thank you, Monty. First things first, as we say in Al-Anon, I almost always ask someone to pray with me before, but we were eating and giggling, so I didn't get to do that. I want to ask for God's correct words and right actions today. I want to share my experience, strength, and hope. And as my Al-Anon sponsor used to remind me before I spoke, she said, "Show your class, Cindy," and I'm sure, you know. As Kay had said, well, first of all, I want to thank the committee, Kay, and Linda, where are you? Linda, is she in here? She's going to be outside. And Mamie for inviting me to come and be such gracious host. I get real excited when I do this, so I get really nervous. So if you hear my teeth chattering and my lips quivering, it's because I get excited. My serenity date is December the 8th, 1991. I was at the end of my second divorce from two different alcoholics. I was raised in an alcoholic home, married a couple of alcoholics. My son is 51 years old and is still active in his disease today. And I know that as long as there is life, there is hope. So, I want to. Did Conrad and Vicki leave?
Yes.
That is too bad, because Conrad and Vicki and Brad, they all told my story. You know, if you anybody in the room lived with active alcoholism? Okay, well, I thank you for inviting me. Y'all already heard it, so thanks for having me. Because there's nothing different about my life than with any of yours. I was riddled with fear and anxiety and resentment and guilt and blame and blah, 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 blah when I came into the rooms of Al-Anon. My brother got into AA 4.5 years before I came into the rooms of Al-Anon, and he will celebrate 30 years in June of this year. I was in my early 40s, and I had 25 years, so y'all do the math. I was not a spring chicken, Brad, when I got in here, not at all. And it's such an example, because I can't tell you how many prayers I've prayed that my son would find what you have a whole lot sooner. And that may never happen. He lives across the street from his dad, and they're drinking buddies. If I could have stood living with his dad, I would have still been there. Just couldn't do it. Didn't have any tools. I had a lot of survival skills. I grew up in an alcoholic home. There were things that happened. Well, before I go to that statement, let me do this other statement. I was about 7 or 8 years old, maybe, when I found out that the man I thought was my dad was not really my dad. He was my stepdad. So the cousins told me. It wasn't my mom who told me. It was the cousins who told me. And that's when I first learned not to trust. Because if you can't trust your mother to be straight up with you, then who can you trust? So things happened in that marriage. When she was married to him, she divorced him when I was 15 and never remarried, by the way. Yeah, really. There's a reason behind that. But there were things that happened in that environment with people that shouldn't happen to a kid. So I learned not to trust. I didn't trust anybody. And I learned a lot of survival skills. But when I came into the rooms of Al-Anon, I began to hear what life skills were. And they were written on the board. I didn't have to do, I didn't have to ferret that out. I didn't have to do any of that. They were written right there on the board. When I was a delegate with Al-Anon family groups, I heard Rick Buchanan, who is the past executive director, share about the legacies. He said, if I use the steps of Al-Anon family groups, which were so graciously allowed the AA AA fellowship allowed us to be able to use those. If I use those steps, I've got this one little tent pole out here, just kind of unstable in the breeze. When I add the traditions to that as part of my legacy, I've got two of them up here, and they can kind of support each other. But when I add those concepts of service, I get that solid foundation that I did not have in the home of my origin. I got a solid foundation in there. This is not a 12-step program. It's not. It's a 36-step program with 5 warranties, and if you don't use every cotton picking one of them, you're short-selling yourself. So I just want to tell you a little bit. Y'all know my story. I mean, I started to say a bad word. My sponsor told me not to do that. I will settle down here in a minute. I was crazy. I was living in fear. I was running in fear. I can remember when my husband left, my brother, who was in AA, came over, and I'm sitting on the fireplace hearth, and he's sitting in a chair, and he said, Cindy, he did what he had to do to save himself. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. What? What? Aren't you my brother? Aren't you the one who's supposed to be standing over here patting me on the shoulder and going, okay, Cindy, it'll be okay? What do you mean he had to do what he had to do to save himself? He said he had to do what he had to do to save himself. And what he had to save himself from, basically, was moi. There was a lot of infidelity in my first marriage. I've been married twice. A lot of infidelity in my first marriage, and it was me. It was not him. He was filling that hole in his chest with alcohol, and I was filling that hole in my chest with my bending, mood-altering men. And there were a lot of them. And for that, I am not proud, and I am not happy. But it was what I did. It was how I made myself feel okay. Because every time I was with my husband, he pointed that finger at me and said, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't drink. If you weren't the kind of person that you are, I would not drink. He told my children that the worst mistake he made in our marriage was to allow me to go to work. I wondered who's going to catch that. Now, he was drinking every day and having trouble with his job and wasn't going to work a lot of days. And, he had no idea who was paying the bills because he was passed out drunk. But the mistake he made with me was letting me go to work. Well, that marriage lasted 15 years. I'm a very slow learner. That marriage lasted 15 years because I couldn't find that one rescuer who was going to come in and sweep me off my feet and tell me that everything was going to be okay until 1980. And here he came, charging in on his white horse. Roses every day for about a month. I said, oh my God, I'm in love. And I married him. And I went into that marriage just like this, scared to death to look right or left, because if I looked right or left, I was going to find another one. I knew I would. And I didn't. I loved him. I really and truly loved him. And the unfortunate part of that was that he was the one then who couldn't stay faithful. So after the second instance of infidelity, I find myself at the end of my rope, with my brother sitting on the chair, me sitting on the fireplace, wondering what in the hell am I going to do? I'd been married a total of 27 years. I did not know how to be single. Didn't know how. Went straight from mom's house to the first husband's house to the second husband's house with hardly any time in between any of those, maybe a day or two. And, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was riddled with fear. And I went to look at an apartment. My friend Kay went with me. Not this Kay, but another friend. And I had called an apartment locator and I said, these are the 3 things that I need. She called me and she said, I have 4 apartments for you to look at. I looked at the first one. She had given me way too many decisions. And And I looked at my friend Kay and I said, can I afford this? She started laughing. And I said, well, you know what? This is going to have to be it because I can't go any further. From that point forward, in that 1 year, my son, who was an alcoholic, and his bride, who was a drug addict, had a baby, and they split up. So that son and that baby moved in with me and stayed with me and my husband for about 9 months. So in this 1 year, this is the things that happened. My son and his son moved out. He and his wife went back together. My husband left me for a woman who was 15 years my junior with 2 teenage kids. That came back to bite me in the butt. My mother got breast cancer. I moved out of my house. I had to get rid of my cat because I couldn't live in a 3rd floor condo and have a cat. I took a traveling job and I started traveling from, I had like a 15-state territory that I traveled. I was a counterfeit adult. I was Miss Professional on the outside. I had a traveling job. I had a company car. I had a company expense account. I wore high-heeled shoes and hose. Yes, I know. It was perfect. But on the inside, I was a scared little girl. What the hell was I going to do? Fortunately for me, both of my children were already out of the house by then. I started very young. I say very young. I was like almost 18. Well, maybe 17 and a half when my son was born. And so my kids were gone by the time all of this happened. But and there was nobody but me to worry about. Nobody but me. But I didn't know how to take care of me. Somebody else had always somewhat taken care of me. I found in the rooms of Al-Anon what I needed to find. And someone, and I don't remember whether it was Conrad or Vicky, that said when they went to their first meeting, people were laughing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am not in the right place. They can't possibly be as sick as I am or have as much problem as I have if they're laughing. And it was in a little tiny Sunday school room at St. Philip's Church in Hurst, Texas. And these big tables, there were like 2 of them side by side, and the chairs were lined up on either side. There were like maybe 2 or 3 down the row. And it was way, way, way too close. I could just almost reach over and touch the nose of the person across the table from me. Too much honesty and too much closeness. I don't know how long I stayed. It was not an hour, and I bolted. Because that's my MO. That's my MO. You put me, I have a friend, her name is Betsy, and she said, when I am in fear, I run and I cuss. And that is me. That's why she and I get along so well. I run and I cuss. You put me in fear, and I do. It's either fight or flight. When before Al-Anon, it was always fight or flight. And today I have tools that allow me to be able to have relationships with people that I love. So, recovery. Al-Anon family groups, in their wisdom to date, has not given us a piece of literature that defines for us what our spiritual principles are. Our spiritual principles are what we define them to be. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story with you using the steps, and then I'm going to share with you what spiritual principle I have attached for myself. It's not Al-Anon. I mean, they're Al-Anon words. We got them out of Al-Anon books, but it's my choice. It's the spiritual principle I choose to attach to these steps. And the first step is we admitted we were powerless, and that is alcoholism or alcoholics, and that our life had become unmanageable. And for me, that was acceptance. I didn't want to do acceptance. I did not. If in my mind, if I accepted, then I condoned. And dadgummit, I did not condone. I was angry and resentful. I did not want to put my seal of approval on active alcoholism. Didn't want to do it. Knowing I am powerless and accepting powerlessness are 2 different matters. The 3 A's of Al-Anon helped me work through to solutions for my problems. Awareness is essential. Acceptance has been my pathway to peace. And many times, inaction is my best tool. Because I was the knee-jerk person. I was the one that said, oh, they called me the fixer at work. You know, take it to Cindy, she'll fix it. Just take it to Cindy, she'll fix it. And I did. Man, I ran every department in that building. Until it got to be so overwhelming that I had no idea what I was going to do. And I didn't want to be that way anymore. I didn't want to be the fixer anymore. And accepting that I have a job, and this right here is my job description, not this right here, was such a powerful thing for me. That's where the concepts of service really came into play for me, was that identifying the links of the chain of command. You know, girls don't play football, and they don't usually, I mean, back when I was a girl, they didn't much go into the military. And that's where you learned about chain of command, was in sports and in the military. And I didn't have those tools. So I had to learn what chain of command meant. My chain of command did not mean that I could go do the president's job when he was on his day off. I thought I could. You know, I thought I could do that. And I had to learn that that was not my place. My MO in working step one was that I would surrender and I'd take it back. And I'd surrender and I would take it back. And bless God's heart, he was very patient with me. My sponsor finally got me a God box that had such a little bitty hole in it, and I couldn't take the thing out whenever she would always tell me, you put it in the God box when you're fiddling with it, and then when you realize that you really laid it down, or if you start fiddling, you put it in the God box when you're fiddling with it, and let it go. And I would do that. And she said, when you discover that you're fiddling with it again, you have to go get it out. You can't do a new one. You have to go get that one out. Well, we never wore that one out. As a child, I felt like I didn't have any choices. I didn't recognize what choices were. I didn't recognize options. Because I wasn't taught that. I wasn't given that. And I certainly didn't teach it to my children. And I certainly didn't allow that with my marriage. It was my way or the highway. He was drunk. He was the one that was the problem. I was running everything. I had all the choices. I had all the options. Never thought about giving anyone else those considerations. And today, I know for myself, as Brad said, I think it was Brad who said that it's nice today to be able to consult someone else and to talk with someone about accepting this situation just for what it is, whether I like it or not, and then figuring out a plan as to how to go and deal with that situation. Step 2 talks about came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And for me, this principle was hope, and that's what I found in the rooms of Al-Anon and AA. I found hope. I saw an acronym for hope the other day that was hang on, pain ends. Hang on, pain ends. Last night when I was at the Southwest group with Mamie, there was another acronym that I didn't take time to write down, but they had, Mamie told me she would send that to me. Didn't you, Mamie? Yeah, you'll send me the acronym for hope that's hanging on the wall in the big room. Yeah. I didn't have any hope. I didn't have any hope when I came out. I was alone, and I was lonely. Hope was on the faces of the people that I found in that room. And they were all different sizes and all different colors and all different shapes and all different beliefs and lots of different things that they did for livings and all of that kind of stuff. But we had one thing in common. All of us had lived with an active disease of alcoholism, and we knew what that meant. We knew the hopelessness that we had felt living in that disease, and the fear, and the anxiety, and all of the other emotions that we feel when we don't have any hope. I read this piece the other day that in a forum, and it said, I realized I was basing my ability to trust God on the experiences that I had with people. And that's exactly what I was doing. I had no hope because I had no God. I grew up in a little bitty town called Holiday, Texas, up by Wichita Falls, a little ways from Archer City. We were the big football team in town. I don't know about y'all, but we were the big football team in town. And there was no hope there either. Really. None. But because of that experience, I knew that I did not want to stay in that place whenever I graduated high school. So what did I do? I got married. You know, that's what you did back then, in the romping stomping year of 1965. You got married. Most of us did when we were, lived in those little bitty towns. And I wanted an education, and I wanted that. I said in my head I wanted that, but my actions were different, which was another thing that I learned in active alcoholism, was that grown-ups would say this, and their behavior would be this, and there the twain shall meet. They didn't match. So I learned a lot of that. Hope was not on my horizon. Today I recognize God's presence as soon as I walk through the doors of an Al-Anon or an AA meeting. I recognize God in that room. It's a sense of peace, serenity, hope, comfort, joy, a new freedom, and a new happiness. That's what I find in the rooms of Al-Anon. Y'all are my family. My family of origin, I'm like Brad. I can take them in little bitty spurts, hour at a time, maybe a couple hours if I'm on a really good day. Step 3 is we made the decision. We make the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. And this principle for me was faith. I didn't have any faith when I came into the rooms of Al-Anon. I had a God. I believed there was God. I believed, like Vicki said, that God was not for me, that God hated me. I thought that 1 year of all of those things that happened in that 1 year was God thumping me on the head, trying to get my attention. And I didn't get it. I still just didn't get it. He drove me to the rooms of Al-Anon on my knees, and I hated him for that. So when he told me I needed to find a God of my understanding, my God over here was this punishing, you did all, what you did back here? Well, today's the day for your atonement, That's how I heard God talking to me. And it was not a God of love. It was not a God of love, and it was not a God of understanding. So I used your God for a while, because that was the only God that I had. I believed that there was God. I believed there was a punishing God. I wanted to believe that there was a God of love and God of understanding. In step 2, I learned that there is a God and I'm not it. That is for the benefit of my children. In step 3, I learned early in the program that this is a spiritual program and not a religious program. I learned that to pray to God for His will for me and not my will for me. I read something not too long ago about, how we all run across these things on the internet, and it was something to the effect of, I am not a human being seeking to have a spiritual experience. I am a spiritual being seeking to have a decent human experience. I am never going to be perfect. I thought I was when I came into the rooms of Al-Anon, because then it was still that counterfeit adult thing, Everybody was patting me on the back at work. Oh, you do such a good job at work. And that was where I found myself, or what I thought was myself. And that's not real. That is not the real me. That's a job. The real me stands in this room and tells you about my fears and my anxieties and my joys and my happiness. I love to dance. I don't do much of it anymore. I had a major back surgery in 2014, and I don't get to dance much. But the sign that hangs in my bedroom that has the word guidance on it. G-Y-D-A-N-C-E. God, you, and I dance. When I let God lead, we just waltz across Texas. We're so good. And when I don't, I step all over his feet and have to make amends to so many different people. So faith in my God today is never ending. He can do for me what I have never been able to do for myself. And I believe that from the very, very, very bottom of my heart. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Somebody watch my time for me, okay? And that's about honesty. I went to an Al-Anon meeting. Well, it wasn't an Al-Anon meeting. It was at Assembly. And the man who spoke at the Saturday night speaker meeting was an Al-Anon, and we very seldom ever have men Al-Anons to speak. So I got to hear Conrad today, and I thought, man, that is going to be really cool, because I love to hear the men speak. They speak from a different perspective than women do. Men are fixers. They're natural fixers. You know, they come in the room like a laser. That's the problem, I'm going to fix it. Women come in like radar. You know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, that has a problem. She needs to have that fixed. She needs to have that fixed. Men are different. This man got up to the podium and he said, "Hi, my name is, and I'm a liar." And I felt like I had been gut punched. Because that was me. I tell you a lie when the truth would sound better. Because I wanted you to like me. I wanted you to accept me. I wanted to be a part of. I didn't want you to catch me doing the things that I knew I was doing that I didn't want you to know that I was doing. I would lie. And I lied a lot. And that's not a part of who I am anymore. And thank God it's not. We are only as sick as our secrets. And when I could sit down and do that 4-step inventory, and I wrote down all of the things that were, who was it that said they had 3 pages of resentments or 8 pages or whatever it was? I struggled with trying to do a 4-step inventory. I didn't know how to do that. My sponsor got so frustrated with me. I'd write, you know, when you hurt and you write, that's when I got my biggest amount of growth. Is I would be hurting and I would write, and I would go talk to my sponsor, and in my head, that's a 4th and 5th. She never corrected me on that, so you know, by the time I'm through with all the crap that I'd written down, I thought I was done. Oh dear. I found that I talk a lot today about character traits. We all have character traits. I am very independent. That's not a bad character trait unless I take it way over here or way over here. Way over here, I'm so independent that I'm isolated and that I'm not a part of anybody's world anymore. Way over here, and I'm totally dependent on someone else. And that's not a good thing either. So what Al-Anon gave me was the definition of what a character trait is, and allowed me to find the balance of that. A character trait or a character defect is just a character trait I've beaten the hell out of. It's not bad in and of itself unless I make it bad. So I practice balance today. It's where I want to live. I want to live in the middle. I want to live in the middle. This step told me who I really was. This step told me who I really was. So I could become the person I really wanted to be. I told everybody I was this person they saw on the outside. This was who I wanted you to know me as. And what I know today is when I get up and I tell you what's really inside my heart, you know who I really am, not that counterfeit person that I can present to people. Step 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, and this is about trust. When I share with another person, I give God a chance to speak to me through that person. I admit to God first. That means for me to come clean. It's not that God doesn't know. Hell, he was there. He knew all that. He's tapping me on the shoulder. That little angel over here that's, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe you shouldn't go home with this guy. You got a man home. Maybe you shouldn't do that. But this one over here is going, this one, that man at home doesn't care. He doesn't care where I am. He doesn't care what I'm doing. But he did care. And God cared. By the time I got into the rooms of Al-Anon, I had broken every 10 commandment that there was, including thou shalt not kill, because I had had an abortion. That was very hard for me to admit to another person. God had forgiven me those things way before I could forgive myself. Admitting to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs allowed those secrets out. They were out, and instead of being too big to fit in this room, I could put them in a thimble and toss them over my shoulder. Because they saw the light of day and they shrunk to an appropriate size. I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I admitted the nature of my wrongs and asked God's forgiveness. And I asked my own forgiveness. I cannot forgive you your indiscretions until I can forgive myself. And as long as I can't forgive myself, I'm no good to anyone else. Second is to take God first. Got to do it God first, and me second. Take responsibility. Share in detail. Share with another trusted person. Search for the underlying cause of my behavior and search for patterns in my behavior. Well, there was a pattern in my behavior. They all had first names that started with, some kind of male name. There was always that pattern. It was searching for something outside myself to make me feel good about myself. That was my biggest character defect. That and the lying and the cheating and all that other stuff that it took to make that happen. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, and this is about willingness. And I loved it when Vicki said that she had that spiritual awakening where she said, I discovered that I couldn't do this on my own, that I had to have God's help. I can't do this on my own. I cannot remove my character defects as much as I would like to. Only God can. And I need to let Him do that. We are powerless to remove these defects of character by ourselves. Boy, that was a hard lesson for me to learn. Because I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof and invincible, I thought I could do anything by myself because I was so independent. Until I got enough humility to admit that I could not do these things on my own, that I needed other people and God. There was no way that I was ever going to be rid of any of my defects of character. All this step asks me to do is become willing. That's it. That's all it's asking. I do not need to do anything else right there. And if it takes me a month or a year just to sit still and be willing to let God do that, then that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Step 7, humbly asking to remove our shortcomings. Humiliation is self-abuse. True humility is letting go of self-will. I am a willful child of God. I can remember my mother talking to me about being a willful child. I think she started washing my mouth out with soap when I was probably 3 years old over the verbiage that I used. And I didn't do anything but get more willful as time went on. That's just me. That is just who I am. And thank goodness I've learned how to temper that so that I can be an upstanding member of the community and be someone that I'm proud to be with. I didn't know the difference between humility and humiliation because I was so humiliated over my past behavior that I really didn't know the difference. Y'all had to help me discern that. We have indexes in our Al-Anon books. Thank God for indexes, because that's how I learned how to identify my feelings and the things that were going on with me. Is I would look words up in the indexes, and then I would read all the pages, and then I would try to figure out, what is this what I'm feeling, or is it this over here? I learned that there wasn't any way that the humility came when I finally recognized there was not any way that I was going to be able to remove my defects of character. That only God could do that. Only God could do that. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And my spiritual principle for this is forgiveness. Feelings are not right or wrong, good or bad. They just are. They just are. I beat myself up my whole life over how I felt. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel wanted. I didn't feel this. I didn't feel that. And I whined about the alcoholic saying the same thing. I can't believe he is so selfish and self-centered. That's all he talks about is himself. We have a saying in Al-Anon that says, if you spot it, you got it. In this step, what I did was I did my 4-step like the AAs do. I laid out the columns, my resentment, what happened, who it was with, how did I feel, and what was my part. Oh, crud, what was my part? And when I made my list of amends, I also did it like AA with those that were direct, those that were a letter to people that I couldn't get in touch with. And then that one person that was on my amends list that I said there would be no way in hell would I do that. And that was my first husband, who called me a slut when he walked out the door. How dare he? How dare he? The emphasis on willingness here. I had to be willing. I definitely had to be willing. There were direct amends that I knew that I could not make to some lovely women that I had abused inadvertently, kind of, you know what I mean. So I wrote letters to those women, and I read them to my sponsor, and then we burned them. There was a letter to my mother, because my mother went to her grave not knowing why I was so full of resentment towards her. She did not protect me in that family that I was raised in. What I came to understand was that my part in that, even when I got to be 15 years old and the last incident happened, and I finally stood up for myself, was that she could not fix what she did not know about. And I couldn't tell her. I could not tell her those things. So she went to her grave not knowing why there was this breach between us. So that letter to my mother was very hard to write. And it was very hard to go to the cemetery and read that to her. I didn't know my dad. My mom was a child war bride. She married at 16 and a half, had me at 17 and a half, and after their marriage, they moved to California. He had just gotten out of the military. And they got married. She moved to California. She had me at 17 and a half. She was divorced and back in Texas at 18 and a half. So I'm still just a Texan, okay? But in that, she had no skills either. She had no life skills. She had a lot of survival skills. She didn't learn any life skills. So I learned what she learned. And in this, I was able to forgive my mother. To openly and say, you know what, Mom, you did the best you could do with the tools that you had available, which was damn few. That was a real eye-opening thing with me as far as my own children are concerned. Step 9 says, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And this is about justice. And last night's meeting, almost the first thing out of the person, and I don't remember the lady who opened. It was at the Southwest group, and it was an open AA meeting. And she said something to the effect about changed attitudes. From the bottom of my heart, I believe wholeheartedly that changed attitudes equals changed behavior. Because until I could change my attitude, there was no way my behavior was going to change. My attitude sucked big time. I was not pleasant. By the time I got to the rooms of Al-Anon, I hated who I had become. I hated myself. That's hard. You know, I'm sure there are AAs in the room going, I understand that. Because that's what my brother told me when he went into treatments. He said, I hate who I am. And the only way for me not to hate who I am anymore is to change what I do. And that's what I had to do, is I had to change what I do. Changed attitudes equals changed behavior. In this making amends, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, those things were hard for me to do. I had to make an amends to my alcoholic brother, who I thought owed me the ultimate amends. He was very gracious about that. He didn't cut me any slack. He told me he didn't appreciate my behavior. But what I came away from that was the understanding that he deserved his feelings. There was an incident between he and my mother one night when he went there. She was living in Euless. I'm living in South Fort Worth. He comes there drunk, making ruckus. I put on my underwear on the outside and I went to save the day. And I get there and there's an altercation between my brother and I throw him down the stairs. And I'm not proud of that. He was so drunk, I don't think he even realized he hit the bottom. But what I took away from that was a lot of humiliation and a lot of, oh my God, what have I done? And a lot of how am I ever going to face my brother again? And when I made amends for that, he laughed and he said, I probably deserved that. And he did. But what I understood for me then was that I was not responsible for his feelings. He was responsible for his feelings. And I wasn't responsible for his what's the word? What he thought of me. What he thinks of me is none of my business. What I had done at that moment was cleaned up my side of the street for that action. And I had carried that for a long time. Mostly carrying it with that self-righteous attitude that I had, that I was the one who was in the right. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have done what he done, blah, 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 blah. It was neither right nor wrong or indifferent. All I did was compound the issue if I'd have just left things alone. Making amends for me today is like taking a shower on the inside. I feel all squeaky clean. I do. I come away with a smile on my face and a song in my heart because I no longer have to carry the garbage that's been weighing me down. Thank goodness for step 9. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, that word is promptly admitted it. The spiritual principle, and I put 2 here for this one because I need this, is perseverance and honesty. I need that honesty, that continued honesty every day to recognize my part in the garbage that I can inflict on other people. And I don't get up in the morning and say, oh, hey, I think I'm going to go out and make sure of life a living hell today. I don't do that. I mean, I don't get up and intentionally do that. But you know, you get caught up in the conversation or things happen and you stick your foot right square in your mouth. Or I do. I don't know if you do, but I do. And then I have to make amends for that. And it's okay today. I can do that today gracefully because I'm not perfect. And I've accepted the fact. I have accepted the fact that I am not perfect. I am an imperfect child of God. And it took a lot of years for me to be able to say, I like who I am today. I like who I am. I read this also. This is an anonymous quote. I would really like to know who wrote this. What we resist persists. Boy, and let me tell you, for me, that is all about honesty. If I resist being 100% honest every day of my life, that dishonesty creeps back in there ever so slowly. I was so cash register honest when I came into this program, it was disgusting. But I was not emotionally, spiritually honest at all. And I need this step to keep me on the right track. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And for me, this is all about spiritual awareness. Patty S. from the Arlington group came to our group one time, to the Northeast group, to share the principles. Not the principles, I'm sorry. To share on the traditions. She did a month-long thing on the traditions. And when she was talking about spirituality, she said, you know, when I walk, I stand. When I eat, I sit. When I pray, I kneel. I need that. I need that. You know, I need that contact to keep myself focused. Because I'm old. My mind wanders all over the place. I can get down, well, I don't get much down on my knees anymore. God and I have an understanding. It's okay for me to sit on the side of the bed and do this. Oh, no, the knees will not stand in. But He and I have an understanding that it's okay for me to do whatever it is that I need to do to stay in that conscious contact. And I know when I am restless, irritable, and discontent, that contact's broken. It's not contacting anymore. Someday, and I had one of these just recently, it was on a Saturday morning, and I got up and I go to an 11 o'clock meeting. I go to about 4 meetings a week, and I got up and go to an 11 o'clock meeting, and I was restless, irritable, and discontent. You know, there was no reason for that. The sun was shining, everything was cool, the car started, no flat tires, everything was great. But there was just something that was in here. I couldn't explain that. But I was in that room less than 10 minutes, and I thought, oh, thank you, God, this is right where I needed to be. And I know when I am in that mode, just get yourself up and go to a meeting. Get yourself up and go do something for somebody else if you cannot find a meeting. Thank God I live in an area where I can just about any hour of the day, I can go somewhere. And I do a lot of service. And I love doing service. Because service is, and when it talks about step 12, about giving back, about that spiritual awakening, there's something that swells in my heart when somebody calls and says, Cindy, can you do this for me? I need help. How many times did I sit in my little corner of the world and whine and pout because nobody volunteered to come do something for me? You know, that mind reading 101, the men in the room will understand that, mind reading 101. Yeah. That's what I thought you did. If you loved me, you would understand what I need. Bullshit corn. When I do all the talking, I only learn what I already know. And Vicki said that. I need you. You put a face, definitely. You put a face on my God. But you also put a voice on my God. I'm literate. I can read the literature. I can do that. But I'm only going to interpret it with that sick little brain that I have going on up here. And I need you to help me find a different perspective. And I need the God of my understanding to help me put that seal of approval on there. Says, that's okay, Cindy. I told her to say that. Or I told him to say that. I need to be able to give back what was so graciously given to me. The second meeting that I went to was at the Northeast group, and when I walked in that room, the chairs were set up in sort of a semicircle, and they were 3 deep, and the room was packed. And people were laughing and talking, and somebody rang the little bell, and we started the meeting, and it progressed just like it was supposed to. And there were men, several men in our meeting back then, and one of them was his name. Shoot, I think it was. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And he would get between me and the door, and he would hug me on the way out. And I was like this. You touch me, I'm gonna whack the crap out of me. But he did every time. He hugged me every time. He gave to me what I would not allow anybody outside that room to do. He gave me that hug that I needed to, that said, you're safe here, keep coming back, you'll get what you need to get. And thank God he was there. Thank God all those women were there. My first sponsor has as of today, has about 35 years in the program. She has a little bit of dementia going on, and she's not served at some of the levels at which I've served, so I have a service sponsor that I kind of use more than my original sponsor. But my gosh, she hugged and cuddled me and told me that everything was going to be all right. And had she not been there, what would I have done? Had those men and women not been in that room and gone in and started that old heater that we all used to hike our dresses up and scoot back up to, because that's what we did. We went in, we made coffee, and we talked to each other, and we went in 30 minutes early, and we had fellowship with the AAs, and I don't see a lot of that going on anymore, and that hurts because I need you, and I know that you need me. Because you've told me that. When I say, we have a piece of literature called Discovering Choices, and this is from chapter 14, page 268. And when I talk about our legacies, that 36-step program, this really sums it up for me. And it says, by accepting that I could not manage my life, and that I had no power over others, which is step 1, I discovered the power of going with the strength of the flow, not swimming against the current, tradition 1, being a part of. I realized I was entirely responsible for all of my life, and that is concept 1. I learned to trust and surrender to a power greater than myself, step 3. I learned to see and respect boundaries and to mind my own business, tradition 3. I also allowed others the same freedom, concept 3. By sincerely and honestly expressing my desire to change, step 7, I began to develop a means to fully support myself, thank God, emotionally, physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, which is tradition 7. Which then made me much better able to recognize, differentiate, and support the needs of others, which is concept 7. They're all there. All we have to do is seek them out. Those steps, those traditions, and those concepts, those are my life skills. Thank you.